Hey guys, this is God of Politics, and welcome back to a brand new video. But before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But in today's video, I'll be doing another alt history video. And a couple days ago, I did a video of the 2020 election if COVID never happened. In the past, I've done videos of the 2020 election if Bernie was a nominee. And in today's video, I'll be doing another one of those videos where I will be doing the 2020 election if Michael Bloomberg was the nominee. Now, let me know if you like these kinds of alt history videos. If you want me to keep doing them, I will keep doing them. If you want me to stop doing them, I will stop doing them as well. But I do enjoy these, so I'm going to be doing another one of these alt history videos with Michael Bloomberg as a nominee. And, going back to the Democratic primary, Michael Bloomberg really could have been the nominee because he did go into the race and he did really shoot up in the polls until that debate where he had quite a poor performance where he fell in the polls and then had a disappointing showing on Super Tuesday where a lot of his voters went over to Joe Biden's column. But had that not happened, had Joe Biden not gotten a decisive victory in South Carolina with the Jim Clyburn endorsement, Michael Bloomberg may have had a very different fate and may have ended up being the Democratic nominee. Now, I really struggled on who he would pick to be his VP, but I think that it probably would have been Kamala Harris, to be honest. I think there would have been a lot of criticism of him being tough on crime, and that would not be alleviated by picking Kamala Harris as the VP. And I think he would try to pick someone that was a person of color because he would have struggles with those groups, particularly with Latino voters. I think he would struggle even more so than Biden. I think he'd do a little bit worse than Biden with black voters, and I think he'd do just slightly worse with Biden amongst white suburban voters and a lot worse amongst white rural voters. That would have been the key demographic that he would have struggled with. Another billionaire in the race would not have helped the Democrats going up against one billionaire in Donald Trump. But let's get right into the states. So to start off with the safe states, that includes Idaho, Montana. The state of Wyoming, of course, is a very safe state, as well as the state of North Dakota, South Dakota, all of Nebraska except for the 2nd District, as well as the state of Utah, Alaska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, as well as the states of Iowa and Ohio. I think both would have gone just above safe margins because in Iowa, Iowa in 2016 went by around 9 percentage points. Ohio went by around 8 percentage points. I think, it didn't have much more in it to become a safe state, and I think that Donald Trump would have made it a safe state against Michael Bloomberg, as well as Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and South Carolina, as well as Maine's 2nd District would have also been a safe margin, probably by around a similar margin to what it was in 2016, maybe slightly more. But that is all the safe states for the for the Republican Party for Donald Trump, and then the safe states for Michael Bloomberg include California, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, as well as the state of Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C., and Maine's 1st District. So that adds up to 183 safe electoral votes for Michael Bloomberg and Kamala Harris, and 150 safe electoral votes for Donald Trump and Mike Pence. Now getting to the likely margin states, I think Texas would have been a state that would have gone by a likely margin. Texas is a state that in actuality Donald Trump won by 5.5 percentage points. I think that Michael Bloomberg would have done even worse in the rural areas. He would have done even worse in the Rio Grande Valley, and he would have done slightly worse in areas like Tarrant, Collin, Denton, Fort Bend, Williamson, all of those counties he would have done slightly worse in, and that would have given him probably a performance where he lost by around 8 percentage points, but yeah, not a good performance in Texas. And then the next state, I think North Carolina probably would have gone by likely margin because there is a lot of room for Democrats to fall in rural areas in North Carolina. Now, a lot of these are rural African-American areas that are less elastic. They are not going to move as much to the Republican Party, but they are moving slightly, and Michael Bloomberg would not have been the best candidate for African-American voters, and he would have struggled with those voters, as well as areas like Robeson County, as well as areas, in the Hendersonville area, Asheville along the western area, an area that historically has not actually been that Republican. There's a lot of room for Republicans to gain in that area, so I think that it probably would have gone by just above 5 percentage points for the Republican Party. I also think Florida, actually, I won't put Florida in the likely margin. I'll put in the lean margin, but you'll see that after. Now, as for the likely margin states for Michael Bloomberg and Kamala Harris, I think Colorado and New Mexico both would have gone by likely margins. I hesitate to say that New Mexico would have gone by a lean margin and Colorado would have gone by a lean margin because, They are states that are, Colorado at least is growing in population. You've got a lot of college-educated white voters that I think Michael Bloomberg would have only done slightly worse with than Biden, but he would have done worse with them, and he would have not done as well, certainly in the rural areas of Colorado. He wouldn't have done as well Biden didn't do well with Latinos, but he would have done worse, Michael Bloomberg, with Latino voters in New Mexico, as well as in a lot of areas like Pueblo, Colorado Springs, the Denver area, and that would have made it a likely margin, but it still would have been a victory nonetheless. The state of Virginia, I think would have also gone by a likely margin. I think he would not have actually performed too poorly in the state of Virginia. I think that he would have done quite well in the D.C. suburbs, but it would not have been enough to win it by as much as Biden did. I think he would have won it by a likely margin. Now, as for the lean margin states, actually, I'll also add Maine at large to that list. I think he would have done good enough in Maine's 1st district. It would have trended enough from 2016 to be able to make Maine a larger likely margin, probably by around 6 to 7 percentage points. And then next is the state of Florida in the lean margin, which I think would have gone to Donald Trump by a lean margin. Donald Trump would have performed even better with Cubans, even better with Puerto Ricans, Venezuelans, all the groups that moved towards Donald Trump, as well as doing a little bit better in a lot of these rural areas, maybe a lot of these coastal areas. Michael Bloomberg probably would actually have an advantage with some of these voters because there are a lot of seniors in Florida that do come from New York. Believe that many people know that, but believe it or not, it is true. And I think Michael Bloomberg would have had some appeal to those voters, and that's why I hesitated to put it at a likely margin, which is why I'm putting it at a lean margin. I don't think Michael Bloomberg would have done as bad in these coastal areas where there's a lot of old New Yorkers, and so I think that it would have been still a lean margin regardless of a terrible performance for Florida Democrats. The state of Georgia, I also think, would have gone by a lean margin. I really don't think Michael Bloomberg would have had the same kinds of strengths with voters in the Atlanta suburbs, and I think he would have done slightly worse with black voters in Georgia, which are a big part of the electorate. I think he would have done worse in North Carolina. I think he also would have done worse in Georgia relative to Biden. Worse in North Carolina. I'm actually probably around a similar trend, probably around 2 to 3 points redder in the state, in both of these states. Georgia's state, of course, Biden didn't do as well with minority voters, and Michael Bloomberg would do even worse, and he would also do worse with the white suburbanites. And those two key demographics are big for the Democratic victories that they got in the runoffs and the general election. Michael Bloomberg wouldn't have had those strengths, and he thus would have lost the state of Georgia. Now, the next state that's going by lean margin, I think Arizona would have gone by a lean margin because Michael Bloomberg would have had a lot of strengths with Latino voters, and he wouldn't have been able to make it up with the white voters. I think Arizona would have gone by just over 2 percentage points, giving Donald Trump another victory in the state of Arizona, as well as, actually, that's all the lean margin states. Now, the lean margin states for the Michael Bloomberg campaign. I think they probably would have won New Hampshire by a lean margin. I kind of am not really fully sure about this. I think Michael Bloomberg would have had more northeastern appeal, being a more moderate figure, being a figure that can appeal to a lot of those voters, but he still would have struggled, and he wouldn't have won it by anywhere near the amount Biden won it, which is around 6 to 7 percentage points. But I think he would have won it by around 2 to 3 percentage points. Still a decent performance for a Republican in the state, but Michael Bloomberg still would have pulled it off. And I also think, actually, I'm going to say that's all of the lean margin states. Now for the tilt margin states, we're going to start off with the states for Michael Bloomberg because Donald Trump's already at 259 electoral votes. Michael Bloomberg's only at 216. A flip, I actually think, would have happened is Nebraska's 2nd district. Now, Nebraska's 2nd district is a state where, or a district, I should say, where Joe Biden did perform very well, and that's because it's a very suburban area, and it has a lot of white voters. And of all the demographics, all of the groups, I think Michael Bloomberg would have had the least underperformance compared to Biden with white suburbanites. He would have done not much worse with black voters, but he would have done, not much worse with white suburbanites as well. And so because of that, I think that he would have won Nebraska's 2nd district, albeit very narrowly. I also think Nevada would have been won by Michael Bloomberg very, very narrowly because I think it's really hard to tell because Biden did win the state by 2.7 percentage points. Michael Bloomberg undoubtedly would have done worse with Latino voters, but I think he only would have done slightly worse with the white voters in the state, and it would have just given him the victory. This would be razor thin, but I think it would be just a victory for him, as well as the state of Minnesota, I think, would have gone by a tilt margin. A similar margin in 2016, Michael Bloomberg would have continued to fall in the rural areas in areas where even Biden performed in this, overperformed in this election compared to Hillary Clinton. Areas like Duluth, Michael Bloomberg would have struggled in. Areas like Rochester, Bloomberg would have struggled in. But he would have not done as bad in the Minneapolis suburbs, and I think that he probably would have gotten a victory by around 1 percentage point. So there. Now, that is all of the electoral votes for Michael Bloomberg and Kamala Harris, adding up to 233, but the tilt margin states for Donald Trump are these 3 states over here. The big 3 that got it for him in 2016 would have given him the victory again because, you take those states away, he's only at 259. You give him Wisconsin, 269. You give him Michigan, 285. You give him the Pennsylvania state, the state of Pennsylvania, and he is at 305, one less than he got in 2016, but with faithless electors, he'd actually get one more than 2016, where he actually got 304. But I think that Donald Trump would have gotten good enough margins in these rural areas. The driftless area, he would have done very well. Northern Michigan, he would have done very well. He would have continued to do well in the central Pennsylvania area and the western Pennsylvania area. Michael Bloomberg would not have been able to make it up with the suburban margins that he would have improved over Hillary Clinton, but done worse than Joe Biden, and so he would have lost all of these states by tilt margins, Wisconsin possibly even by a lean margin. But overall, this is the map. Quite a close election, to be honest. Donald Trump would have still gotten the victory, but it would have all been because of tilt margin states, the tipping point most likely being the state of Michigan or the state of Pennsylvania, one of the two. I think Wisconsin would have been the furthest right out of these 3. Michigan would have been the furthest left, thus making Pennsylvania the tipping point state, as it was in 2016. But overall, this is what I believe the map would have been had Michael Bloomberg been the nominee. Donald Trump would have been reelected president of the United States, even with COVID, which is something very, you would have to give him credit for in that situation. But here's the map. Thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys later.